Hello, everybody. Welcome into another edition of the Computer America program. Ben and I have a terrific show planned for you, as always. In the second hour of the show, we're going to have NextGen interactions on the program, talking about virtual augmented reality and what you can do if you want to bring that to other people. It's just kind of interesting. And then the first hour, IONU security. Going to be joining us, David Bennett, who is the CTO of it. We're going to talk about bringing data from the limitations
until showtime
of perimeter and threat-centric security. Allow it to flow freely and securely. So we're going to be talking to him about that.
If you didn't understand any of that, that's okay.
Hopefully he'll explain it to you. So we will be starting momentarily, so sit back, relax, as we bring to you Computer America right here.
Your show will go live in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1.
Broadcasting live, it's America's longest-running national radio talk show on computers, Computer America, hosted by national columnist Craig Crossman. Look for Craig's weekly column in your favorite newspaper. This show is being beamed nationwide at ComputerAmerica.com. Keep it here for technology news, computer products, guest interviews, and your phone calls. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello, and welcome into the Computer America show. It's the nation's longest-running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers. Computer America is heard around the world and coast to coast. And I'm your host, Craig Crossman.
And I'm your host.
And welcome into another edition of the Computer America show. We have a terrific program planned for you today. In the second hour, we're going to have NextGen interactions, talking about virtual and augmented reality and what you can do to bring it to everybody, not only yourself. It's going to be an interesting hour. And in the first hour of the show, we're going to be talking about security and ways to protect data and freeing it to flow however you want. It sounds unbelievable, but we're going to be talking to David Bennett, who is IONU's CTO, and we'll be finding more information about that. Now, if you have a comment or a question for any of our guests, you can give us a call at 347-884-8881. That's 347-884-8881. We'll get you on and get you through. We also have another way for you to get your question submitted. Go to any of our pages at ComputerAmerica.com. Any page in the upper right-hand corner, it'll say Submit a Question. You can do exactly that. Just click it, and then it'll ask you to type in your question or comment or suggestion. Click the submission button, and Ben and I will see it instantly, so we can pass along your sentiments to our guests or just read them out loud, whatever it happens to be. The other thing you can also do is join us on a live video stream. Computer America is a radio broadcast. However, we also make our live video stream available to you, our listeners. Just head over to any page again at the internet home of Computer America, which is ComputerAmerica.com. Any page, you'll see it says Show Lounge. Okay, it's in that little yellow pull-down menu kind of bar, and just click that. When you click the Show Lounge, you'll be taken immediately to the live video stream. It will begin instantaneously. You don't have to do anything else, and you can watch a show. You can see myself, you can see Ben. Sometimes you can see our guest. Certainly, always with Ben, he has the technology to display websites, movies, videos, so you can watch the interaction whenever Ben is speaking, and it certainly enriches the experience that we call Computer America. So that's about it. Of course, you can also listen to the stream live. We have links at ComputerAmerica.com just to listen to the live audio. It'll take you to the Blog Talk Radio Network, the TuneIn Radio Network, the IRN Radio Network, all the different places that carry the show live. And then in addition, if you miss any of our programs, you can also listen to the archive portions of the show. We archive it up on Apple's iTunes, as well as all the other places I just mentioned, including 2 new ones. SoundCloud now carries the archives of the Computer America show, and Stitcher also carry the archives of Computer America, just making it even more easy for you to reach out and enjoy what it is that we have to offer here on the program. Ben, you are sitting quietly and stoically in the background. Anything else you might want to make a comment about before we get started?
Yeah, this show happens to fall right in the middle of my sport watching time, and that hopefully everyone out there is, hopefully they switched over and started listening to us. But for anyone out there who is a fan of League of Legends, the first day of the World Championships started today, I want to say around 9 a.m. Eastern.
Were you up?
And
you were up?
I was. And they're still going on. I believe they're in like game 5 of 6 that they're going to play today. It's going to be going on, I believe, like all month long, because they have, about a dozen teams that are going to be playing. And when I last left in just the one venue I was watching it streamed on twitch.tv. There were about anywhere from 400 to 700,000 people watching at any given point. So, I'm obviously not alone, and again, that's just through one platform. So, everyone out there who, hopefully you're all enjoying that, and if you didn't even know, go catch it, and it's just, a really great sporting event. Even if you don't like, or even if you never played League of Legends, it's still very entertaining to watch to see, the best people in the world play the game on an international stage.
Excellent. Oh, by the way, also we have an upgrade alert. Yeah, there's an upgrade. For those of you who have an iPhone, Apple just released 9.0.2 of the
They
iOS.
did do that. They did do that.
Yep, and I've already updated too. Probably in the second hour or something, if we have time, we'll read some of the release notes talking about some of the changes. Some of them are insignificant, some are kind of significant, so we should mention that this comes on the heels of 9.0.1, which just let out a couple last week, and so already we're on 9.0.2. I guess they're just settling in for iOS 9. But
well, a lot of bug fixes came in with this one, including, I believe, some stuff with the photo managing app and the messaging app.
Yeah. Well,
so a lot of little bug fixes.
Okay. Well, we'll talk about those a little bit later on the program. But that said, I think we should bring our guest in.
All right.
Okay. And now imagine this: freeing data from the limitations of perimeter and threat-centric security, allowing it to flow freely and securely while being safe from compromise anywhere. Wow. Now, sometimes you need to step away from the way things have always been done and ask yourself, why? I mean, why are things the way they are? I mean, you need to step beyond the thinking that formulated the status quo in order to create a new order. At IONU, they are excited about driving a fundamental change in the way that data is protected. Their data-centric security platform allows data to flow freely and securely anywhere it needs to travel or reside without the need for plugins, the use of proxies or gateways, or requiring changes in user behavior. Now that's amazing. Here to explain how all of this works to us is David Bennett. David is IONU's CTO, Chief Technology Officer. David, welcome into Computer America. How are you?
I'm good. Just to clarify, the pronunciation is IONU. It's sort of a play on words.
IONU. Okay.
IONU is IONU.
I should have asked you that before the show. IONU. IONU. Okay. So there.
It's okay. We pronounced it 4 different ways, and they were all wrong. That's par for what we do here at Computer America.
So David. Oh no, it's David. I'm sorry. David.
Either one works. I've been called worse.
IONU. Okay. So you heard my introduction. Did I explain it correctly, or is there something you want to add, obviously, to this?
I think that's a pretty exciting and verbose way of saying what we do, which is our sort of catchphrase is we protect data everywhere. So if you're using our tools, then wherever your data lives, if you email it to somebody and they're editing it and they save it, they can't actually export it even though they have it on their own machine. So we keep the data protected wherever it lives, in Dropbox, in your whatever cloud storage service you're using. If you email it, if someone else has it, it's always safe.
Now, is this something that I, as an end user, have to implement, or do I rely on the people who are implementing this for me? I mean, at what level is this? Is this sort of like a company, enterprise, consumer? What level is IONU?
Well, so we have different configurations of the system. So I like to, I wish I could show pretty graphics like you guys can, but there's sort of a tension that exists between security and ease of use. Generally, things that, the most secure system is one that's encased in concrete at the bottom of the ocean.
I've heard this before. You're not the first one to say that either. So this must be something fairly common. Yeah, let's encase it in concrete and drop it in the bottom of the ocean. Now it's safe.
Now it's reasonably safe unless you have a submarine or whatever. And then the easiest to use one has no virus protection, no firewall, no anything. At least it'll be usable for a few seconds before you're pwned by somebody. So somewhere between those two extremes, there are places where the user experience isn't too unpleasant and the security isn't too relaxed. And we've tried to identify multiple points along that continuum where we can introduce products that will enhance people's security while not interfering too much with their daily operation. So if you go to our website, you can download our product for Windows, Android, iOS, and Mac, and we support all of those platforms. And just as a general user, you get a certain level of security. You don't necessarily get the top level of security unless you create what we call a data private network, which you can do as a user. You can create a data private network, but typically we would envision that enterprises would create data private networks. But even without the data private network, you can exchange messages, you can exchange files, you can share files with multiple people, you can send files to other people, and those are all protected through our secure network using our deployment in our cloud deployment. So among the differences between what we do and say Dropbox or Google or whatever is we do client-side encryption. We do synchronization like Dropbox, Google Drive, and Microsoft. But in our case, we do client-side encryption with keys that are never exposed to the server. So if the server gets hacked or if the government comes in or whatever and demands keys, we don't have them, so we can't actually. There's no way for any intruder, whether it's sanctioned by the government or not, to get keys from our servers. So we have that's somewhat unique. There are a few other players who do that. Another capability we have, which is only available if you have a data private network, is the thing that we were talking about first, where if I send data anywhere, it is protected. It cannot be leaked. So if you and I are in a data private network and I email you a file, you can view it. It could be a Word document. You can view it. You can edit it. You can save it. But you will not be able to send it back to anybody but me if you and I are the only people allowed to see it. You can send it to somebody else, but it will be encrypted with encryption keys they have no way of getting access to.
All right, now when you say you download the product, what is it? When I go to IONU's website, what is it that I'm downloading? I see you offer a number of platforms that you mentioned here. There's the XP or newer, Yosemite required, the iOS 8 or newer. And it says download. What is it that I'm downloading? What is it you're giving me?
So it's you're downloading an app for mobile devices. It's an IONU app, and essentially, I assume you're familiar somewhat with iOS, but things are sandboxed in iOS, so it's kind of difficult to, for example, you can't really easily share data between applications on iOS. So for example, if you're using Dropbox or Google Drive, then or whatever, then we don't our application doesn't have access to the data in the Google Drive app, so we actually have implemented the API so that we can store and retrieve encrypted data in your Dropbox or your Google Drive or your Box um, cloud storage. So on the mobile devices, that's the way it works. On your desktop devices, whether it's Windows or Mac, we have essentially we create a virtual file system. And in the virtual file system, everything is protected with IONU. Now, if you use our native isolation, which is again the step up when you get the data private network, then your entire computer basically becomes a secure drive, and so everything you save will be although you don't, it's kind of complicated. If you're like sending data to somebody who doesn't work for your company, then they still use the virtual drive to access the data, and most of their access is their normal operation. So I guess what I'm saying is we can either take over your machine and make sure everything absolutely that you do is secure, or if you're a third party, then only the stuff that you're working on with the company who owns the data private network is secure. But
So let
you install our software on your machine, but you don't have to. We also have a web-based client too that also supports all of the same capabilities that our mobile app supports.
So let me see if I understand this. Are you saying that basically you're like a VPN? Is that what you're offering, or not?
No, we don't actually do a VPN. We don't modify network traffic. So it is just it's a service that lives when you install it. I'll talk about Windows because that's what is most that's what most people are using, and it is the desktop platform that most people are familiar with. So the mobile devices, it's a separate app, but for the desktop devices,
let's stick with Windows. Let's start. Give us an example. How, let's say Ben goes to the IONU website. He downloads the Windows client or whatever you call it. Is it a client or it's an app? What is it?
It is we'll call it a client.
Okay.
It actually, there's a Windows service. So when you install the app, basically nothing really changes on your computer. You install the app and you create an account with IONU. When you first install the app, it will run an account creation capability. You create an account, you log in to IONU, and then your app goes away. So think of the way Dropbox works. Well, it's very similar to the way Dropbox works. Now, once you've done that, you have a directory in your home directory called IONU, and we'll put a favorite in the navigation pane so you can see the IONU app.
Okay.
From anything you store in the IONU directory is secure. So it is encrypted with keys that only the client has. We also have cloud synchronization, again, like all of the cloud storage, Dropbox, Box. And so if you put files in there, you can they automatically get synchronized to all of your other machines that are using IONU. In addition, you can create shares. You can share your files with other people. You can invite people to a group, and you get a group share, and you can then copy files into there. And only the people in that group can decrypt those files. The key exchange, all of that happens behind the scenes. As a user, you need to do nothing. You have no knowledge, you have no exposure to keys. All of that is handled completely behind the scenes.
Totally.
So we don't even use the word encryption because encryption has become kind of a dirty word because people automatically equate encryption with hard to use. If you've ever used PGP, you can understand why people think that. So we make encryption. You don't even need to know. You don't even see the encryption. When you have files that are protected by IONU, all you see is a little overlay over the icon that indicates that that file is protected and safe. Now, in the default mode, if you're not using the data private network, you as the user can do anything you want with those files. You can decrypt them, you can send them in clear text to anybody you want. But as long as they're within the IONU environment, they're safe. Now with a data private network, then you get into the enhanced capability where you can't actually, as a vanilla user, it's up to the administrator to decide who can deliver files, who can decrypt files, take them out, and deliver them in the clear to somebody else. But generally, most users cannot. Their files are always encrypted. And again, they need to think about it. Wherever it lives on their desktop, I can put it on a flash drive. I can send it an email. I can upload it to Dropbox. Wherever it is, it's protected. It's always encrypted, and the only people who can get it are the people with the keys, and the only people who can get the keys are the people who have an account with that data private network.
Now, sometimes when I upload something to Dropbox, I want it to be public. I want everybody able to get it. I don't want to hide it. Would I not use your service in that case, or would I just basically just do what I normally do, and anybody can have access to the data? Let's say in my Dropbox, or how do you?
Well, so we create you can. With the Windows client, you can select any directory anywhere on your machine and say, I want any files that are put into this directory to be protected. That directory can be on a flash drive, it can be in Dropbox, it can be in Google, it can be anywhere you want. But, so if you want to make a file visible to anybody, again, if you're not in the data private network mode, you want the file to be visible to anybody, you just don't put it in one of those directories. You put it in your public Dropbox public directory, and you have said, I don't want files in the Dropbox public directory to be encrypted, and then those files can be viewed by anybody. So it's in the lowest impact mode, it's entirely up to you. You have to have some knowledge of what you want to be protected and what you don't want to be protected, and you make the decision about what you want to be protected. Now, when we get into the data private network, then the data belongs to somebody else, and it's up to them to decide whether they want the data protected or not.
Okay.
See, I mean, really, it's a lot of words, but it really boils down to whatever you want to be protected. It's as simple as putting it into the proper drive, or putting it in the proper folder, put it in the proper place, or as I said, if you make your whole computer, then you don't have to think about it at that point. Everything's good. One thing though is, let's say I have a drive on my computer completely encrypted, all this good stuff. Is that why you made the web portal? Let's say I log onto a different computer and I wanted to access those files, and yes, they were backed up to to the cloud. So I don't have to download IONU on that computer. I could just go to the web portal and access those files.
That is correct. So that's a little tricky because, if you remember at the very beginning, I said all of the encryption is done on the client side so that the keys are not known to the server.
Right.
So we have created a client that runs in the browser in JavaScript, and it does the encryption and decryption in the client, in the browser, in JavaScript, which can be a little. You may have to wait if you've got, let's say, using Chrome, which turns out in many ways to be the fastest, but in terms of JavaScript turns out to be hideously slow. So we tell people to, at least until they fix their JavaScript, to use another browser other than Chrome.
Let me ask you this, Dave. I mean, you're the CTO guy. I mean, and I've picked no bones about it on this show.
Hey, Greg, it's JavaScript. You love JavaScript. JavaScript. I mean, in today's world with HTML5, there's no real reason to have things like that or Flash. I mean, HTML5 is capable of doing all of this stuff. Why are you even dealing with Java or JavaScript anymore? Why not just make everything HTML5 and just tell people you have to use a modern browser and be done with it?
Because people don't always want to use a modern browser, and we have to support the world.
Real world application.
We use the least common denominator.
Sometimes
you're stuck with that. You're stuck. I mean, as our website says, we support XP. Now, talking about least common denominators.
Yeah, I mean, look, there are certainly people out there, but sometimes you just have to say.
Let's put it this way: if you had it your way, if you had a magic wand, would you have everything switch over to HTML5?
Well, since we wrote it all in JavaScript at this point, I'm not sure I would.
That's a lot of work. I hear you.
Yeah, so if you're familiar at all with encryption, when you're dealing with you're writing a random number generator that generates 1024-bit random numbers and then multiplies them together and gets the exact same answers that you do when you're running it in C++ on Windows. You can imagine that's quite a bit of work to get the exact same results, which you have to do in order to be able to decrypt, RSA decrypt, let's say, a file. Or a key to unlock the file.
When did IONU come into first? How long has the company been around?
2.5 years. We started in February of 2013, I guess that would
So
be.
HTML wasn't a surprise. You knew it was coming along. Why not just start at the beginning and say, look, you need HTML5. I mean, you knew about it. You knew it was going to replace everything. I mean, I understand if you started in 1990 something, but obviously you've been around a lot more recent. And why did you make that decision? Or why didn't you make the decision, look, you need HTML5 to make this work?
We aren't Steve Jobs, so we don't get to tell everybody in the world what they want, what is best for them.
Even if it is, right?
Even if it is, we don't get to tell people what's best for them.
Okay, fair enough. All right. I gnash my teeth every time I think of things like this because it's like all this legacy stuff that's holding us back.
Well, I guess when you service the enterprise, I've worked in plants that you would like everything to be new and shiny and everything, but in the great year of 2014, they were still using computers from 1998. You can't always have the latest thing, especially in I'm sure in enterprise. It's just not possible.
They're still using XP in many enterprises because the IT department is. They have to do all of these things to make sure all of the tools that they have to support will work on whatever the next thing they go to is. So they have finance software, they've got custom built internal software, all of these enterprises, and they have to. I used to work in a very large company, and we were always 2 or 3 levels behind because there's some piece of software that someone somewhere in the company, the HR department, the sales department, the finance department, that isn't supported, hasn't been ported to the latest operating system, and so you have to wait until that happens in order for you to move the entire company forward. And so again, we are not in a position like Steve Jobs to tell everybody that they have to move to iOS 9.02. So we have to support whatever our customers are still using. I did want to make one more comment about the data private network. So you did sort of grasp the nature of the thing where there's this special directory for where things that get protected.
Mm-hmm.
But in the data private network, instead of it being associated with the directory, it's actually associated with the files. The files themselves then become the unit of the encapsulated items. So if I'm in the data private network and I email you a file and you're not in the data private network mode, you still can open that file, edit it, and if you try to save it anywhere, it will be protected. Even if you put it in a completely different directory or send it to a friend of yours, they will not be able to access it. So that's yet another level of security that requires a more intrusive setup, but that gives the control, instead of to the user, it gives the control to the owner of the data. So for instance, if you're the MPAA and you're sending out Oscar nominees to a bunch of people to view, you can use our tool, send it to them, and they can watch it, but they cannot send it to somebody who's going to turn it into a torrent file and pirate it across hundreds of thousands of users. They just can't do that. It will be encrypted, and there's no way for them to make it available to anybody who's not on the list.
Well, I'm sure the Oscars thank you for that too.
Well, we would like to have more interactions with them.
Exactly.
Because we think we can offer them something nobody else can.
All right. So if you're one of the guys who talked about this, why don't you tell us about one of the most commonly held fallacies about information security, in your opinion?
Well, it's almost like shooting fish in a barrel. There are so many common misconceptions. Um, One of my favorite is, we talk about encryption, and people will say, well, I use PGP or TrueCrypt to do whole drive encryption.
Mm-hmm.
Why isn't that sufficient? And so the answer to that is that's not sufficient, because unless your computer is turned off, your data is available to whoever is on that computer in clear text, including the guy sitting next to you on an airplane who has hacked into you without your knowledge, and now he's got all your data, even though your laptop has a whole drive encryption. So there's a whole bunch of commonly held beliefs about that you're safe, that
When you're not.
that are really, it's not just that you're not, it sort of leads you down the garden path where you've been told a set of things that make you believe you're safe, but you're just completely almost as unsafe as if you were doing nothing. The whole
David, I'll tell you what. We're at the bottom of the hour. We're going to take a little bit of a break, and then we'll come back to you. Okay?
Okay.
We'll continue this on. You're listening to the Computer America Show. Ben and I are talking to David Bennett. He's IONU's CTO. We're talking about security and what IONU has to offer and how easy it is to work with. We've got a News Disposal review from Marty Winston coming up as well. You're listening to the Computer America program. Ben and I and David will be right back after this.
Sometimes disaster strikes. Data can be lost due to many different reasons. Accidental reformatting, power spikes, virus attacks. Zero Assumption Recovery provides a suite of highly effective and thorough data recovery software for Windows operating systems. ZA is suitable for home users and small businesses who need a powerful data recovery solution for Windows and Linux file systems.
Go to z-a-recovery.com.
Sometimes disaster strikes. Data can be lost due to many different reasons. Accidental reformatting, power spikes, virus attacks. Zero Assumption Recovery provides a suite of highly effective and thorough data recovery software for Windows operating systems. ZA is suitable for home users and small businesses who need a powerful data recovery solution for Windows and Linux file systems.
Go to z-a-recovery.com.
Hi, this is Craig Crossman, host of the Computer America Show. You have important meetings to schedule. Your company's getting ready for its IPO, and you're in charge of the PTA fundraiser this month. So how do you coordinate everyone to be available at the same time? Are you still using emails, phone calls, even text messages to schedule meetings with a group of people? How's that working out for you? Not so great, huh? It's a fact that every day, millions of people suffer from scheduling headaches. Well, with Doodle, scheduling meetings with a group of people is quick and easy. With Doodle, you can easily propose available times to each member. Each one checks off the times that they're available, and then you simply pick the time that works best for the group, all in an easy-to-read display that integrates with your existing calendar. Nothing could be more simple. Give Doodle a try for free, and like millions of Doodle users, you'll truly see how easy it is to find the perfect date and time for all your meetings. That's www.doodle.com.
Spreading projectors, take that off the resume. Oh, hi, it's Marty Winston with a News Tips Bulletin Review for Computer America. This time, Anycam. Anycam is a Windows utility from 10Flow that lets you cheat at video monitoring. If you know IP addresses of cameras, the odds are it can connect to those cameras and let you keep an eye on them in a resizable desktop window. We got that to work with one camera that theoretically only works on an Insteon system and a Motorola camera that doesn't want to get used without a cloud app or a web feed. Note that it's only a viewer. You don't get to use it to configure or point the connected cameras. We keep it in a corner of a side screen to keep an eye on packages or visitors at the front door. Bottom line, 10Flow Anycam is a quick, easy, and non-frustrating way to keep watch on what vidcams are watching without dedicating a smartphone to that function. Marty Winston, News Tips Bulletin for Computer America.
Welcome back to the Computer America Show. 33 minutes past the hour, and and that was a News Tip Bulletin review from Marty Winston. Thank you for that.
And it worked. And it worked.
And it worked. I know. It's a grand deviation from yesterday, so that's good. So 2 days ago. My bad. Anywho, so we're here with IONU Security's CTO David Bennett, and we are talking about we kind of had to cut him off in the middle because of the commercial break.
Right.
But we were just discussing what he would consider to be a commonly held fallacy about information security. So I'm going to let you wrap up your thoughts on that one.
Well, what I was saying before is that I would say there's a bunch of these cases where people have led unsuspecting consumers down the garden path into thinking that they're safe. And it's kind of malpractice in a way, because they're taking these people's money and not really delivering something that's particularly useful, which I find personally offensive as a security guy.
I mean, I get it. I think everyone kind of assumes that they get some little piece, like they add in numbers and symbols into their passwords, and they do this and they do that, and and that's what the consumer can do. But I guess the consumers just kind of trust the business side. No one ever delves in and says, okay, well, what service are you actually using? What techniques are you actually using? Because honestly, that seems like the kind of stuff that would go over 99% of the the public's head.
Exactly, and so that's why I consider it somewhat to be like malpractice. It's like doctors prescribing unnecessary medication. Of course, the average patient has no idea of what a particular medication is going to do. They just hope that their doctor is telling them something that isn't going to be harmful to them and actually stands a chance of helping them. So it's passwords is another one of my favorite things. People think putting a number in 3 instead of the letter E, or an I instead of the letter, or a 1 instead of the letter I, or something like that is actually making their password secure. So I just am really annoyed. Any website where it tells you you have to have mixed case and numbers in your password, I know that whoever designed that doesn't know very much about security, because if you go look at search for hashcat on your favorite HASHCAT on your favorite search engine, you will see these things crack passwords that are just unbelievable. That because all of these things where when you capitalize the initial letter of a word, when you substitute a number for a letter, all of those tricks are known by all of the password crackers. They get 90-some% of the passwords. So the only way to really do a decent password is to not use a word, an English word. Use something else. You have to have more than 8 characters, because all of the password crackers are pretty much now all do an exhaustive check of anything 8 characters or less. You have to use something that's not a word, and if I said English, but of course if you're in a foreign country, whatever the language of choice is, use something that's not a word. Even 3 or 4, up to 4 words put together, that's why they're able to crack these passwords that are 20, 30 characters long, because people put together 4 words separated by punctuation or numbers or whatever. Those do no good. Those are not good passwords.
Yeah. David, I mean, knowing does this make you distrustful of doctors too? And
well, I can't really. My daughter's in medical school right now, so I can't really say anything bad about doctors.
So what makes a good password? You're saying don't use don't use any words, is what you're saying?
Try to avoid using anything that's a word. Obviously, if we're in America, then English words, maybe Spanish words, because most people know a few words of Spanish. Don't use words. Use random strings of characters, or put punctuation in middle of words where they're not going to be commonly,
But
don't put it at the end of the word or between words.
but the flip side of this, David, is I'm sure you understand that people make these really exotic passwords. They forget
And then
them.
forget them.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, so what
So,
happens?
so the problem is that the bulk. I'm going to go into the deep technical dive here for a moment. The problem is that most of the passwords are hashed using one of the more common hash algorithms like SHA or MD5, and those actually are poor choices. So this is an attempt again on the part of this is why I say people who websites that are making these recommendations are that people don't know security because they're not using a good hash algorithm to hash the passwords. So we, for example, use PBKDF2, which stands for Password-Based Key Derivation Function 2. Now,
And that requires a heck of a memory just to remember the name of the.
well, actually, I can never remember the initials, but I do remember password-based key derivation function, so
Yeah.
then I can think of the initials. But anyway, the difference between that and let's say SHA-2, which is the most common one used today, is that SHA-2 is an algorithm that is easily parallelized by using a GPU. So the Hashcat, for instance, runs on a GPU. PBKDF2 has two characteristics that make it ideal. One is that it is not easily parallelized with a um, uh, um, GPU, and the other is that you can specify a number of iterations to run, so you can actually slow the PBKDF2 algorithm down. And we pretty much use enough iterations so that, again, if you're using Google Chrome, you'll notice it is noticeably slower to log into our website than it is for other websites because we're using PBKDF2 written in JavaScript, just Craig, so that you know. And so we are doing that so that we don't have to have, if you're using a 6-character password without punctuation and mixed case and numbers, you're probably going to be safe with our website because we use PBKDF2 and we crank up the number of iterations to make it run slow so that it's not really, and we add salt, which most people are doing these days, but salt is so that you can't pre-compute a bunch of salt is added so you can't pre-compute a bunch of passwords and then just compare the hash against something else. So so any website that's asking you to to put all this crap in your password they're doing that because they're not using they're low tech. They're just low tech.
Well, you see this at bank sites. Also, they'll make recommendations. You need at least one a capitalized alphabetical character. It has to be at least 8 characters long and contain 1 punctuation mark.
Right. I suspect that the reason they do that is just for appearances.
Really? Okay. So even if you don't make the first letter, let's say the 4th letter is the capitalized letter, so it's something non-standard, and you use a lowercase, and you're using.
See, here's what I think. I think they do all this crazy stuff. 1 special character, 1 capital, 1 number, 1 photo of a dog. I don't know. they do all this stuff so that people forget their passwords because I hear it's good practice to change your password every couple months. Just out of principle. So I bet they do this to make people forget their passwords so that they change them. That's my theory.
But are you saying that complying with that routine, not the first letter, let's say alphabetized, but let's say the 3rd or the 4th letter alphabetized and the special character, and it's at least 8 characters long, you're saying that's not safe?
So 8 characters is not enough. It has to be more than 8 characters.
Okay.
If you're capitalizing some random character, then I think you're probably safer if you comply with their rules.
Mm-hmm.
But the point is they don't say that in the rules, right?
No, they don't.
And they don't tell you not to use English words. Again, this is a case where they're leading you down the garden path to your destruction because you're going to create a password where the punctuation is at the end, the first letter is capitalized, and it'll be the name of your daughter or your son or your place of birth or whatever, and it's just not going to be a very good password.
What about password managers? Are those any better?
Well, those are good because they generally generate, well, if you let them, they will generate a good long random password for you, and that's a fine password. But I go back to what I was saying. The whole reason for this is because they're lazy, right? They're not using an algorithm that will protect you regardless of what password you choose. If they were using PBKDF2, none of these things where you read about 9,000 passwords lost, none of that would be happening. It just because they've chosen to do the lowest common, it's like JavaScript. They've chosen the lowest common denominator, an algorithm that has been fine-tuned by hackers to be able to be run on GPUs, and that is why that's why they fail. And that so they, instead of putting the onus on themselves to fix the problem algorithmically, they put it on their onus on all of their users to inconvenience themselves with stupid passwords that they can't remember. I think Ben could very well be right. That's just a conspiracy to make them forget their passwords, so they have to change it.
Well, all right. Obviously, there are a lot of companies that have been hacked, and I mean, and in spite of all the cybersecurity products that are out there, you know, we read about leaks from major companies and even governments almost on a daily basis. Why is this happening?
Well, I think another commonly held fallacy is that all of these tools that people are selling actually work. So I was at the Black Hat conference, and I would say somewhere between 70 and 80% of the vendors there were essentially some form of anti-malware, you know, Symantec, McAfee, and there are a whole host of people, FireEye, Palo Alto Networks. These are people who are saying, we are going to keep the bad guys out. And this is an arms race where the uh, the losing end of the arms race is always the people trying to keep other people out. This, you know, this battle has been fought throughout history, trying to keep people out of the castle, and it never works. And so I can go out. I personally can't, probably don't know where to go, but one who is appropriately connected can go out and buy what are known as zero-day hacks. I'm sure you've talked about these on your show before.
Right.
These are hacks that have never been seen before, and they are not they're not prevented by any of the, because they've never been seen before, they're not prevented by any of the current malware detectors. And for $10,000, I can buy a zero-day hack, and then I have the keys to anybody who is using whatever that zero-day hack is for. And another fundamental difference that we're seeing from, say, 10 years ago is that before, you know, we had these viruses, Valentine's Day, what are some of the names anyway, and these viruses would get distributed across the world, and they were really more annoyingware. They exploded, they wiped out your boot sector, or they would spam your friends with erectile dysfunction medication, I guess, or whatever. And then that was sort of, they had done their duty, and that was as much damage as they did. But the difference today is that these malware attacks, instead of trying to just annoy you or disrupt your operation, they go in and they sit there for weeks and months, and their goal is to extract data. And the Russian cybersecurity mob makes ungodly amounts of money just collecting data. A lot of this is credit cards, and then they can sell those credit card numbers to somebody else. And then the only way that the targeted companies find out is they have to buy software, which is the other 10 to 15 or 20% of the people I saw at Black Hat, where they are selling tools that allow you to know when you've been owned. So it's like, okay, the good news is we've discovered this. The bad news is We don't really know how long it's been happening, and all of your data, it could have been leaked, but at least you know your data was leaked. So it's like getting a bad diagnosis from the doctor after you're already terminally ill. Um, so, and that's the state of the art. That the state of the art is these anti-malware software tools that don't work, and then these other tools that tell you when the anti-malware software didn't work, so that you can let all your customers know that they need to go be issued new credit cards.
Wow. So
That's the state of the art, and so that's why actually we're in business, because most of the companies aren't actually. There are a few, just a tiny handful, like 2 or 3 companies that are actually focused on protecting the data, which is where we are. So our assumption is they're gonna get in. They're gonna get in, and they're gonna get your data. We just want to make sure when they get your data that they can't do anything with it. So with our scheme, if you're in this data private network, when your data leaves your network, there's nothing that they can do to stop it from being encrypted. So they get it, and it's of no use to them.
So I guess it comes down to the bottom line again about IONU and your products. And go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just wondering what kind of because we've been talking about a lot of technical things, and yes, this all happens behind but behind the client that you really don't even see. How large of data flows can you handle doing things like this?
How large of what?
Data flows, like let's say you have a server and it's sending massive packets of data. Can you encrypt those on the fly? Will it slow things down tremendously? Can you only handle a certain amount, per second? How much data can you handle?
So we don't interfere with, we don't deal with network traffic. We encrypt the files as they're written to the disk. So our there we are using the standard off-the-shelf AES encryption, which adds about I think it's 2 CPU cycles per byte roughly. So with 4 gigahertz processors, those are really fast, and it's handled when you're reading or writing the data. It's not handled when you're transmitting the data through big pipes. We're completely uninvolved in that transaction.
Okay.
So I would not recommend putting our software on a giant database just because you're doing a lot of random access, but you could if you wanted to.
Okay.
So if you had to summarize and tell our listeners what's different about IONU's products, what would you say to them?
Well, as I said, I think the fundamental difference between what IONU is doing and what almost everybody else is doing in the computer security business is that we are operating under the assumption that you're going to be hacked. People are going to get in, they're going to penetrate your network, and they're going to try to get your data. And we just want to make sure that when they get your data, there is nothing that they can do with your data. That is what makes it different, what makes us different than almost everybody else.
So if it's that straightforward, why has someone figured out a better solution to these issues, before you? I mean, or before now,
well,
or was it that whole thing at the very beginning where you can make it secure, but it's not very accessible? Is it that whole dichotomy?
I think that actually is a very good point. I think our the blurb you read at the very beginning talks about that, and that is um, you need to come at the problem from a different angle. I think the bulk, again, from my experience with Black Hat, the bulk of the people are coming from the assumption that you can keep people out, and that history has proven you cannot keep people out. But yet 90, 80, 70 to 85% of the people at Black Hat are vendors telling you we're going to keep people out for you, and because most of the even people in IT are relatively naive or not necessarily very well acquainted with all of the low-level technical issues associated with that, they're being led by down the garden path to assume that these vastly inflated claims about how protected you are by using these products are actually true, and then they get hacked, and they realize at that point, after it's too late, that those claims were not able to be met. But in the meantime, they've spent hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars on this equipment that didn't actually protect them, and so those companies continue to make a bunch of money and continue to purvey these um, extravagant and unmeetable claims.
Well,
So
let me ask you this, because encryption is being offered by many companies, like Microsoft Office 365 offers encryption. Dropbox, that you keep mentioning, offers encryption. Google Drive, all these. But why they're offering encryption? But why are they not sufficient?
So those, that's a great question. Those companies, almost all of the cloud storage companies, not just almost, all of the cloud storage companies are saying that they offer encryption, and in fact they do offer encryption. The problem with their encryption is it's done on the server side, and the problem with being done on the server side is that the server then has the keys. So if a hacker hacks into um, Dropbox or Microsoft or Box, and the server has access to the keys, that means the hacker has access to the keys. With IONU's solution, the encryption is done on the client side, and the server never has the keys. Only the client has the keys. And my keys are different from your keys. So in order for somebody so if somebody hacks my keys, they get my data. They don't get your data.
Well, David, look, these people aren't dummies, Microsoft. These people. Why don't they know this?
They do know this, but again, the vast majority of their customers don't, and as a result, the vast majority of their customers are led to believe that they are safe, and they're fine with that. The other thing is there's some incentive for them to have access to the data. Let's take the case of Google. So you put a file up in Google Drive, and what is Google going to do with that file? They're going to search that file and try to mine them for information about you so that they can sell that information to somebody else. So it's in their interests to be able to decrypt your data. Microsoft's is somewhat of a different thing, but there are a bunch of features that they would like to offer, like web-based file editing, that if Microsoft Word operates on files in their cloud in the web browser, and if the data is encrypted on the client, then they would have to write a JavaScript version of Microsoft Word or HTML5 version of Microsoft Word that could decrypt the contents of the data and allow you to edit it. And it's not an impossible problem, and in fact, we offer something similar to that. Um, but that is a lot of work, and they don't want to have to do that. That's a pain.
Well, they can always buy you guys out, right? I mean, they're Microsoft, right?
I would be up for that.
Which happens so often, really. We kid about it, but it does. Maybe if they get enough complaints, say, hey, let's just buy them out and let's use their technology.
They would be really smart to do that. Let's just all agree to that.
Okay. David, before we say good afternoon, anything else you want our listeners to know about IONU and where they can go to get this, and how much does it cost? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So our go to www.ionu.com. We have a Twitter feed, which is IONU Security INC, and the lowest level entry software is free. In fact, all of our products, you can go on the internet and you can download our products, or go to Play Store or the iOS App Store and get our software for free. And the free version lets you encrypt your files, gives you the control of whether to encrypt or not, and you can send secure messages to people or secure emails to people. And if you are an enterprise and are interested, the pricing varies with the number of users you deploy, and you can go to our website and get information about that.
But a general consumer, there's really no charge, is what you're saying.
There's no charge. That's correct. You get, and like with Dropbox or Box, you get a certain amount of free storage. I don't off the top of my head know what that is.
Ben, we should make a note to put the IONU on our free software site page.
Awesome.
We should.
We should do that, exactly. Hey, David, listen, thank you so much for being with us here. Again, awesome work that you're doing, and thank you so much for being with us here today and letting our listeners know about IONU. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you for having me and letting me let your listeners know about IONU.
Okay,
Our
David.
pleasure.
All right, thanks again, David. And it'll be up on our website, too, at computeramerica.com. It's up there right now, so right on our homepage. So if you want more information, just click on the logo there or go to the information and go to their website. We have links to the IONU website. David, thanks again for being with us here on Computer America. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
All right, have a good day. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye now.
All right. Okay, so there you go. Again, IONU, I-O-N-U, and you can see it at computeramerica.com, the website. It's up there right on our homepage right now, and you can check it out for yourself. Okay. All right. What's coming up in the next hour? And he's already in the wings, so I know that. NextGen Interactions is going to be joining us. Dr. Jason Gerald is going to be here with us. He's the founder and principal consultant. We're going to be switching gears to virtual and augmented reality. Okay, and
that's not relevant to today's news cycle at all. Why are we talking about this now?
We're going to talk about bringing it into true reality. Okay, if you already have a virtual or augmented reality system that needs a little tweaking or something, Jason's here to talk to you about that as well. In the meantime, we're going to take a short break and then be right back. You're listening to the Computer America Show. Ben and I are here. We're going to be talking again to NextGen Interactions. We'll have another News Tips Bulls review from Marty Winston coming up as well. We'll be right back. You're listening to the Computer America Show. Don't go anywhere. Promise me. Okay.
Broadcasting live. It's the only national radio talk show on computers to air every weeknight. Computer America. Hosted by national columnist Craig Crossman. The first hour's behind us, but there's still more of tech news, tech talk, and your phone calls. We're being beamed nationwide at ComputerAmerica.com. You got computer problems? Bring them on. You're listening to Computer America. Computers run the world, and we run computers. Call us or send us an email to live@computeramerica.com.
Hello and welcome into Hour 2 of the nation's longest-running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers. This is the Computer America Show, and I'm your host, Craig Crossman.
And I'm your co-host, Ben.
And again, thanks for IONU in the first hour. And again, if you missed any portion of that, and it was really very interesting, Dave Bennett, the CTO over there, talking about passwords and computer security. I bet you Charles Tendell would have loved to have been here with us on that show, on that one. But again, if you if you missed any portion of it, you can listen to it again. We archive everything at ComputerAmerica.com, right there, the internet home of our radio talk show. You can go there, click on the archives on our pull-down menu on any page, and it'll take you to our archives page where you can listen to the show. You can listen to it on SoundCloud, on Stitcher. You can listen to it on Apple's iTunes, on the Blog Talk Radio Network, all the different places that archive our show. Also, SoundCloud carries the show now, brand new. Stitcher also carries the show. All these different places you can go to listen to Computer America. All of it is there. The videos are also archived. We have our own YouTube archive video page. So you can, it'll take you to the video page. You can click on the little icons there and select the show that you want to, so you can not only listen but watch the show. It's all available at ComputerAmerica.com. Okay. So anything else you want to mention before we go to our next hour guest?
No. Just that the first hour interview went much better, than I thought it was gonna be a little dry, but. That actually was pretty informative and very enjoyable to listen to. So if you didn't catch that, like Craig said, go listen to that in our archives. But
and let me just briefly mention, we talked about iOS 9.0.2. It came out today. It's available. 9.0.1 was just out like a week ago, and now they came out with 2. And basically, it just says these updates contain bug fixes, improvements, including fixes an issue with the setting to turn on or off app cellular data usage. There was a bug there. It resolves an issue that prevented iMessage activation for some users. It also resolves an issue where an iCloud backup could be interrupted after starting a manual backup. And the last two are fixes an issue where the screen could incorrectly rotate when receiving notifications. I hate when that happens. And finally, it improves the stability of podcasts. So all that is available for iOS 9.0.2. And I thought they were going to come up with a fix. What was the bug that we just read in the news the other day? And I thought it was coming out. I guess it's still on its way. It was an exploit that they had discovered.
Right. Yeah. I think that was like going through Siri and the lock screen. They get access to your photos.
Right. That's exactly. So I'm sure the next maybe 9.0.3 will fix it and correct that.
But
problem.
again, these updates that are 9.0 point whatever number, those are generally bug fixes and minor things. Like don't expect any kind of user interface changes or any kind of massive overhaul or new native apps. Like that would come in like a 9.1 or even a 10.0. Yes, definitely get them, but don't be worried about getting them.
Yep, exactly. Okay. All right, well, we're moving into the second hour of our show. And again, if you have a comment or a question for our guest, give us a call at 347-884-8881. That's 347-884-8881. I'll get you on and get you through. Any page at computeramerica.com, the upper right-hand corner, submit a question. Just click that link. It'll take you to a question submission page. You can type in your question, hit the submit button, and Ben and I will see what it is that you want us to say. Okay. All right, so let's bring our next guest in. Now, here's the question. Need help in bringing your virtual or augmented reality concept into true reality? Have a virtual or augmented reality system that needs tweaking? Or let's say you're just not even sure where to begin. Well, NextGen Interactions offers a variety of services to help you reach your technology goals. Now, here to explain what those services are and how they may help you is Dr. Jason Gerald. He is the founder and principal consultant of NextGen Interactions. Jason, welcome to Computer America. How are you?
Oh. Hi, Craig. I am doing well.
Hi.
How are you guys?
Well, we're
doing great.
Doing great. We're hanging in there. Yeah.
So, I tuned in yesterday, and I heard you guys were talking about virtual reality yesterday as well. So exciting times.
Yes, it is. Yeah, really. This is some great times to be living. All these things just here or just around the corner. With it. So before we get into it, now according to this, your bio, it says you have around approximately 20 years of experience in virtual and augmented reality under your belt, and so
how much of that is virtual?
It's actually mostly virtual reality, actually.
Yeah. So how'd you get started?
Real in reality.
Yeah. How'd you get started in this?
Well, actually, I first saw virtual reality back in 1995. It was sort of, that was all the rage back then, in many ways similar to what it's like nowadays. And I had heard about it at that point. I really wanted to try it, but first saw it at SIGGRAPH in August 1995. It was, VR, virtual reality was everywhere at the conference and in the news and in the media and such. And I fell in love with it. I knew at that time that this was what I wanted to dedicate my career and my life to. And I suspect that's, similar to people experiencing virtual reality nowadays, whether they're going to a conference or a meetup or they see it through a friend system, whatever it might be, of just, seeing and getting at a very visceral level what virtual reality means and what the potential for it. And it changed my life and still continues to change my life. Technology is changing so quickly in this industry of virtual reality that it's mind-boggling. It's almost on a daily basis that, something new comes out.
It's really nice to have that defining moment. Something happens to you. I mean, I had something similar happen to me in my career, but it's really nice to have something that hit you, rather than say, well, I'm not sure what I want to do. Nothing's kind of leaping out at me, but to have something like, wow, that's it, and that's what I want to do. That's a great thing, isn't it?
Absolutely. And it was also the people that were involved. Similar if you go to a virtual reality meetup nowadays, it's, as much about the people as it is about the technology. I grew up in a very small town of about 1,500 people and, taught myself computers and how to program and all that, but really didn't have the people with similar interest around me. And so once I got to that conference, that's what really got me as well. Is I joke that that's where I had finally found my people.
You have a PhD. What is your PhD in?
Well, it's in virtual reality, of course.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't even know they offered a PhD in virtual reality.
I didn't either. When I discovered that in 1996, it was at the same conference about a year later, I saw some speakers. I saw specifically Dr. Fred Brooks, which is sort of one of the fathers of computer science in general. He put things like, he put 8 bits in a byte, for example, which blew me away. I always assumed that 8 bits, that was just sort of an inherent truth. I didn't realize that, there were 5 and 6, 7 bytes, not powers of 2. It just boggled my mind. I just accepted that as a truth. But he's been doing virtual reality since the 70s, and when I saw that, it just blew me away. I was like, wow, you mean you can actually go to school for this and study to do this? And that just took it to another level. I said someday that's what I want to do, and eventually moved on to study with him.
You must have been a fan of the holodeck in Star Trek. I mean, that must have.
Oh, of course.
Okay.
Absolutely, and that analogy is really great. I mean, virtual reality is something that's really difficult to explain to people who haven't experienced it. It's trying to explain a complete new medium. So explaining video before video existed, or explaining video without the visuals we have here on your program. It's something completely different.
No, exactly. And now you mentioned you're talking like 20, maybe longer than that, but how has the industry evolved in the past 20 years?
Oh, it's changed immensely. There's a lot of similarities and parallels, but there's also a lot of differences. One is cost. There was another amazing demo, still one of the best demos I've seen to this day as far as virtual reality goes, in 1996, and that system, was $500,000 just for the hardware, right? It was a silicon graphics machine, and it turns out that demo I saw was this sort of Legoland virtual reality demo that they weren't letting us try it because it was too expensive. The system was too expensive, but you could see what he was doing, and he was inside a virtual environment and a head-mounted display, building neighborhoods of Legos by just reaching up and grabbing individual Legos or blocks of Legos and just putting together this entire world. He was creating something, and it turns out that many years later I came to work with that same team and continue to work with them today. But just totally blew me away what that was, and he told me that story when Silicon Graphics handed him the RAM for the memory for that system. They said, I forget what it was. It was a lot of memory for back then. I believe it was a gigabyte of memory. Yeah. And they said, here's your memory. This is a gigabyte of memory, and that's a lot of memory. But they also said, don't lose this. This is $250,000 worth of memory. So that certainly has changed.
Yeah. So now let's flip that. So where do you think 20 years from now you and I are going to be sitting down here, you'll be on the show again, and where do you think we're going to be in that interview?
Well, that actually, history is very useful. We can learn from past mistakes, how to improve things and such, but what really gets me excited is obviously the future. I mean, maybe that's why I'm attracted to virtual reality so much, is that I joke that I'm a futurist. Once I started my own consulting business, NextGen Interactions, I kind of realized that I need to kind of live in what's possible now, because I'm always thinking 20 years in the future, even though it may not be correct. That's just where my mind naturally goes. So I love to just fantasize about the future and where it might go. And I mean, it could go anywhere. I mean, the displays are obviously going to get cheaper. It's going to be more accessible to everyone. I believe when the cost comes down enough, where it's as simple as low cost as basic phones now, virtual reality is going to be an equalizer, because the way you interact with a computer, you don't have to learn how to type at 60 words per minute, right? You can virtual reality, if it's done well, the interface can be done in a natural, intuitive way. So you don't, my grandmother can go into a virtual reality environment, and again, if the application is designed well, she can just interact with it in the similar way she can in the real world. And so when anyone can be able to interact with technology instead of just, those of us who have been working with technology for a long time, but anyone can do it, that changes everything. Suddenly everyone's on an equal playing field.
Right.
I mean, first of all, I don't want anyone to knock being a futurist here, because I mean Elon Musk has made a couple $1 billion by living in the future. It's working out well for him. But in what you're saying though about people interacting with their computers instead of using like that seems like a very foreign concept to a lot of people, because that would mean that your computer up until this point has always been something that you sit down and you use, and mobile phones have gotten a little bit better at it by being a little more intuitive, but it's always been a tool. What does virtual reality do? I mean, like, since it's going to be virtual reality, are we going to use virtual reality, or are we going to kind of experience virtual reality?
I think probably on the augmented reality side is going to be more of a daily use sort of thing. I'm not going to be driving my car. Well, maybe. I mean, who knows? Anything could happen in 20 years. I'm not going to be driving my car to work wearing a head-mounted display. Although I guess Elon Musk may have automated driving cars by then, so maybe I'll take that. But I'm not so much going to using virtual reality interact in the real world as I do today. It's going to be more of a the definition of virtual reality is essentially replacing real reality, right? So combining those together is sort of not really the best use case if it's true fully immersive virtual reality. But if it's augmented reality, then we're adding cues onto the real world. And so augmented reality, although it's more challenging to do well, it's extremely challenging. Just the requirements for that are, I haven't seen a really high quality augmented reality system yet that works even in a research lab. It's got a long ways to go. A year out, a few years out, I don't know how long, but when it does get here, that's when it's going to turn into everyday use as a tool that's just sort of there when I need it. I don't, the headsets I'm going to be wearing anyway. Or you say 20 years out, I mean, that may be retinal implants. The retina is the backside of your eye, allows you to see. Maybe we'll have direct retinal implants or direct neural implants.
I'm not sure if you're a fan of Futurama, but they had the iPhone where they just jam, an implant in the back of your eyeball.
The iPhone EYE, right?
But I mean, we've sort of touched on it. I mean, we've had Google Glasses. That was augmented reality. They didn't do so well, but at least we started with that. Or we have heads-up displays, in the windshields of cars, which are augmented reality. That's sort of an augmented.
And then I guess people saw the HoloLens as well.
Yeah, and the HoloLens. That was my third thing. So we are seeing the HoloLens. I thought that demonstration was pretty impressive considering what they were doing. So these things. But here's the thing. We have the Oculus Rift, and we have all these. Google's got them. We can take your smartphone, put them in a cardboard thing, put them over, and you have virtual reality. I mean, virtual reality is really making a comeback in the past couple of years. Let me ask you, why do you think this is happening now, and what was the tipping point?
Well, the tipping point was definitely Oculus. They've done such an amazing job, and I know Palmer Luckey is such a great person that's able to communicate the vision of virtual reality like no one else has been able to do yet. And it's the timing. The technology has come down in price, but it's also doable. Even with the amazing technology we've had in the past, there's been challenges with latency. Latency is the time it takes from your movement until the photons hit the back of your retina, essentially. The timing was great, and actually that same technology using cell phones has been around longer than Oculus. So that was, sort of the low cost virtual reality was been done by the University of Southern California Institute for Creative Technologies. Essentially, the Oculus Rift, as well as all modern cell phone-based virtual reality systems, are based off what they were doing around 2011 or so, and they were really the first research group to show that virtual reality can be done at this super low cost using existing technology. In fact, I remember I was at a conference, I think it was 2011, maybe 2012, but the demo they were showing was literally made out of cardboard. Like they could have called it, USC cardboard versus Google Cardboard. It's almost the exact identical design.
So the latency really is in the hardware. I mean, obviously between the time the screen shows it and it hits the back of your eye, you're talking at the speed of light. So we're not really talking about latency there. We're talking about latency on the display, from the time you turn your head. So I understand that is the thing there. So now you hear all kinds of things that, oh, I put on the virtual reality, it was wonderful, and then I started to get seasick, or I started to get ill. I mean, are there health dangers to virtual reality that we need to overcome? What are we talking about here?
Absolutely. So you asked about where did I get my PhD and what did I study. I studied virtual reality, but specifically I studied latency and perception of latency in virtual reality. So I've spent many years studying that, decreasing latency down to about 8 milliseconds, which is pretty darn fast. And then I measured perceptual thresholds. How low does it need to be before you stop noticing it? And sickness is certainly a factor. In fact, one publication states that latency is the greatest contributor to simulator sickness than anything else, right? It's our biggest problem. However, that was years ago when the technology wasn't quite as fast. The different companies such as Oculus and the Samsung Gear and the Sony PlayStation Morpheus have gotten the latency way down to about the 20 to 30 millisecond level, and it turns out that's pretty good. You can still notice it if you look for it, but it's done well enough that that's not so much what gets you sick anymore. Now, if you're using other sort of older cell phones and such, the display, exactly what you were saying, can add significant delay. But if it's done well, latency isn't no longer the problem. And in my book, the VR book, I go in extensive detail on that because sickness is such a major problem. It's the the biggest risk to virtual reality not succeeding, bombing again like it did in the 90s. If we don't get that handled and we don't build the applications and such and we don't do it right, then there's danger that it's not going to go mainstream and it won't get there. And so I divide sickness into 3 contributing factors. There's the system factors, which are things like latency or the calibration, for example. There's the application, how you design the application. Even if you have the perfect hardware system, if you're doing crazy things of putting, the user on a roller coaster that's, going all over the place, the person's going to get sick because their sense of balance doesn't match what they're seeing visually, and that's a cue conflict that causes simulator sickness. And then there's also the individuals. Some individuals, you can do crazy things in the application and maybe the system isn't perfectly calibrated. They just don't get sick. Other people, they get sick in almost any situation you put them in. And so there's all these different factors. There's no one single contributing factor.
Okay, but if you had to pick one, it would probably be the lag, is what you're saying.
It sounds like we need to leave the weak behind, is what I'm gathering.
Yes.
Yeah.
I like that. That could be my new logo. My new,
the week behind, yeah.
Well, no, like I've seen it before, but latency though, like the sickness is one thing. I've tried a couple things. I've never gotten sick, and that's fine with me.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah, I know, but it's still annoying when the inputs of the whole thing lag. Like when I actually saw a video of a gentleman. He was wearing virtual reality with a camera strapped to his head, virtual reality on his over his eyes, and he had the video relayed to the virtual reality, and he was trying to do everything through the screen, and there was that like half-second lag time.
Ooh,
that was causing, like, he was trying to make pancakes with it, and he made a mess. How has that been lately? Do we have input controls? Are they getting faster?
Yeah, definitely. So a lot of that depends on the application. It depends on the input controls, those sorts of things. The fortunate thing about input controls is it may get really annoying, and you might not be able to make pancakes, but it's not necessarily going to make you sick if we're talking about hand input. And actually, that brings up a great point, because I believe hand input is just so important for virtual reality. A lot of the systems, at least the consumer-driven systems right now, you can go in a virtual reality environment and look around, which is pretty cool. For immersive film, it's perfect. But if you want that interactive experience, man, you got to have the most important input device ever known to mankind, which of course is the human hands, right? Controllers just allow us to efficiently use those human input devices. But it can get annoying and difficult to use. And so that's one of the challenges of hand input as well. We can do pretty well with those. If it was half a second, that's definitely a lot, and that probably is more on the application side than the hardware side. Right. However, part of that is if you're using the camera to track, then there can be a lot of latency with that camera. If it's something called video see-through augmented reality, you're essentially capturing from the camera, you're capturing the real world, then redisplaying it through the head-mounted display. And that has some advantages. It allows you to do things easier, to create augmented reality systems more easily, but it also creates more challenges that, similar to what you're talking about, that can add a lot of delay, just because cameras are slow now. They're not optimized for augmented reality, and unless you have a high-end professional tracking system, they can be slow for tracking.
Don't you have parallax problems too? Because if the camera's up here and your eyes are normally here, you have a parallax differentiation that you're not really seeing what you normally would see. I think the process there is to let you think it's sort of like augmented reality. You're seeing through it, but you're really not, and everything's out of whack there. Doesn't that can cause a disorientation, can it not?
Absolutely, and you can imagine if you take your head and you pitch down like so, suddenly you're moving in a different motion than how your eyes, what they see in the real world. Yeah. And so it depends what types of head motions you're doing, but yeah, that can be very disorienting and sickness-inducing, in addition to the lag.
If we put the camera on the back side of the virtual reality, we're going to get to the full circle point where people are going to walk up to you and say, you could just take the whole contraption off and you get the same thing, right?
I was at a virtual reality meetup once, and they had a video see-through, system like we're talking about, and someone had walked in, and they didn't realize I was seeing video see-through, and so they saw me with the headset on, and they happened to come up and stand beside me, and I looked at him, I read his name tag, and I looked up and I said, "Oh, hi, so-and-so, how are you?" Then I stuck out my hand to shake his hand, and I kind of freaked him out, because he assumed I'm in this headset. He's like, how does this person know who I am, and like, how can he see me? And he shook my hand, but he was very confused.
You should have said it was the new face tracking system from the FBI, and it was downloaded onto the thing and just tracked it.
Oh, yeah, or come invest in my new startup.
Exactly.
No, but this is gonna be kind of jokey, but this should be listed under one of the dangers. Is I guess you have actually researching this. One of the dangers, maybe if you have mean friends, you kind of leaving yourself vulnerable. You're covering your eyes from an evolutionary prey instincts, kind of motivation. You're leaving yourself vulnerable to the environment around you.
I need to add that. I need to add that list to my list of factors of adverse health effects. Yeah, that could be a problem.
Right.
There you go.
So what what scenarios would you say are best going to be conducive, in the near future, in 20 years, how far you want to take it? What scenarios would you say would best be for virtual reality? Is it when you're home, in your favorite recliner? Is it when you're going to be in a social gathering? What is virtual reality going to excel at?
So I think it's going to diverge. You have things like the Samsung Gear, which is just perfect for. You put it in your backpack, or even not even a backpack, a small bag, and that's one difference. So back in the '90s, as well. Back in the 90s, you needed a semi-truck in order to ship your virtual reality system. Now you need not even a backpack. You just need a little small case. So that form of virtual reality is not going to be as high-end as the sit down at your gaming station in your bedroom or basement, but it's socially, you can just hand it to the person sitting next to you at the bus stop, and something you can talk about, and just for example, the in most cases the Google Cardboard doesn't even have a strap attached to it. It's not even a head-mounted display. It's simply a display that's not mounted to your head, but that allows you to just show something to someone real quickly in any location. And so I think there's not going to be just one version of virtual reality, but many different types of virtual reality. Another example is location-based entertainment, similar to arcades back in the 80s and 90s. Is not everyone can afford a gaming system at home or has access to that. Some people go down to the local the local arcade and have fun there, and that's a much more social environment.
I think local arcades though are kind of fading. I mean, because people today, they can interact with other people without having to leave the room, and still.
I guess I'm lucky. We have a very thriving one, not even a block or two away from here, and it's massive. So.
Well, I think the reason for that is because you get just as much quality in the home. So there's a couple answers to that. One is we can have super crazy, hardware devices such as omnidirectional treadmills or motion platforms and such that just aren't feasible in the home. Or you can have walk-around systems where you can get up, and in a home you may be physically limited by the walls. You bash your head into the wall if you don't, you walk around in the virtual environment.
Yeah.
But that can be more controlled in a location-based entertainment sort of environment. Also, not everyone is willing, if you're in Las Vegas, then you may not be the type of hardcore gamer that has a high-end computing system at home, so doesn't have virtual reality. But if he just kind of sees it in a shopping mall or in Las Vegas or whatever, he might say, "Oh, cool, I want to try that." And it's sort of a impulse buy versus having to invest and set up an entire system themselves, that is sort of the complete extreme opposite side of the spectrum compared to the social VR of the Google Cardboard, for example.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, Jason, we're at the bottom of the hour, and I want you to continue this, and let's also talk about why.
Where the heck did that half hour go?
Yeah, I know. Well, why virtual reality is becoming more and more exciting now, and what are some of the developments that are going on?
There we go. We get to talk about the future.
Yeah, exactly. You're listening to the Computer America Show with Dr. Jason Gerald. We're talking about virtual and augmented reality. We're going to be right back with them right after these words. Stay with us, please. Hi, this is Craig Crossman, host of the Computer America Show. You have important meetings to schedule. Your company's getting ready for its IPO, and you're in charge of the PTA fundraiser this month. So how do you coordinate everyone to be available at the same time? Are you still using emails, phone calls, even text messages to schedule meetings with a group of people? How's that working out for you? Not so great, huh? It's a fact that every day, millions of people suffer from scheduling headaches. Well, with Doodle, scheduling meetings with a group of people is quick and easy. With Doodle, you can easily propose available times to each member. Each one checks off the times that they're available, and then you simply pick the time that works best for the group, all in an easy-to-read display that integrates with your existing calendar. Nothing could be more simple. Give Doodle a try for free, and like millions of Doodle users, you'll truly see how easy it is to find the perfect date and time for all your meetings. That's www.doodle.com. Looking for a best friend? Brother Wolf Animal Rescue has your best friend waiting just for you. The mission of Brother Wolf Animal Rescue is to help build a sustainable, no-kill community where no dogs or cats are ever killed for population control, where true euthanasia is reserved only for animals who are irremediably suffering, or for animals who are truly a threat to society and with no hope of rehabilitation. Brother Wolf's staff and volunteers go door to door, neighborhood by neighborhood, to educate citizens about local resources available for at-risk pets and to help their families connect with those resources. Brother Wolf's community-based approach to no-kill helps keep family pets healthy, happy, and in their homes and out of the local shelter system in the first place. For more information or to make a tax-deductible donation to this wonderful 501c3 organization, visit their website at www.bwar.org. Help to realize Brother Wolf's vision when no animal is euthanized for lack of a home.
Who's a good boy?
It was a booty so big it needed backup lights and a warning beeper. Oh, hi, it's Marty Winston with a news tips bulletin review for Computer America, this time double image 7.0.50. Whenever we need to make sure that one of our external drives has a doppelganger copy of selected folders from a production drive and prevent copying older files over newer ones, we turn to double image. Its new 7.0.50 release helps its Windows 10 compatibility and more. Some of its operations with network drives, for example, are better. With directly attached drives, native Windows files are saved the same way, so they're immediately available without any restore process. That's a handy way to update the notebook when it's time to hit the road. Once we define and save a backup session profile, we can run it manually anytime or schedule it to run invisibly and automatically. Bottom line, double image software replicates and never aggravates. Marty Winston, News Tips Bulletin for Computer America.
Welcome back to the Computer America Show. It is 33 minutes past the hour. News Tips Bulletin Review by Marty Winston.
Yep.
And we have Dr. Jason Gerald here. He is the founder and principal consultant for NextGen Interactions, and we're talking all about virtual reality, augmented reality, all that kind of thing. And before we get back to talking about the future, let's talk about the future real quick. And that trust me, I'm sure you are judging by your work, you're all for this, and you obviously want this to happen. I am a gamer, and this is going to open a lot more avenues. I'm just excited about having a 105-inch screen without actually having to go out and pay $100,000. I want this to happen more than anyone else. But we've seen it with 3D TVs. We've seen it with a couple of other technologies, and I want you to put on a real expectation. Do you think that virtual reality? I don't even care if it takes off. Do you think it's around to stay for the near future? You said that it was kind of popular back in the 1990s and mid 1990s and things like that, and then it died, and now it has a resurgence. Is that going to happen again? Do you think it's going to stick around? What do you think is really going to happen now that consumer models are starting to come on the market?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, absolutely, it's here to stay. The question is how much. Is it going to be mainstream where every single person has a head-mounted display like they have a cell phone? Well, that might be more like 20 years off. I don't know where that might be. But there's just too much momentum behind it right now with these dev kits and the consumer units set to already ship, that even if it dies, they're still going to be out there. Now, the comparison, of course, you can do compared to the 90s, but something more recent that you alluded to is the stereoscopic 3D televisions.
Yeah.
Why did they fail, right? People were really excited about that. It was kind of all the hype. Well, my belief is that certainly a 3D display is really super cool. I mean, it's awesome. And of course, the argument was the reason why it won't work is because you have to put something on your head. You need the 3D glasses. We don't have auto stereoscopic displays yet, which you can see 3D stereo without having to wear glasses. The quality of those systems just aren't there yet. So that's one reason for the failure. So the argument is, well, virtual reality, you have to put something on your face as well. In fact, it's worse than 3D stereoscopic displays because those glasses are horrendous. The goggles are horrendous.
Right.
Well, the reason why I believe is stereoscopic 3D television certainly was cool, and there was a little bit of wow factor, but it was essentially the same medium, just adding a third dimension onto it. Virtual reality is an entire different medium completely. It's not just enhancing what we have with typical displays. It's something that's entirely different, and it's something that's very difficult to explain in words. It's something that you have to, Ben, it sounds like you've tried many virtual reality demos, but you kind of get it when you try it if it's a really well done demo. Most people are completely blown away by it. However, if you just try to explain in words, people are like, what's the big deal? I don't know, this is kind of weird, like I don't get it. But
Yeah.
just the potential for gaming, for example. I mean, you happen to be a gamer, so you see the potential. But what if someone's not a gamer, right? In the professional space, what about design review? Corporate design review, or telepresence applications where you can feel like you're with your family even though you're across the country. Not feel like you're in the family with a video phone, which is another example. Video phones dying, similar to 3D stereoscopic television. But this is truly something completely different, not just an enhancement. And the reason why this is something that's been completely different and has been so difficult to gain mainstream acceptance until recently is something that's so different is hard for people to grasp onto, right? People don't like change. It's easier for them to grab onto gradual change with slight increases in technology. However, somehow...
Or they've experienced 3D TV and they say, that wasn't such a big deal, and then they were disappointed, and then they're expecting to get another disappointment, not really.
Yeah, it's incrementally added value. Exactly. And, I believe this is just completely different. This isn't just better than, watching. I mean, Netflix recently announced you can watch Netflix in VR, which I guess is kind of cool, but to me that's sort of like incrementally added value. That's not going to, make it stay, because most people are going to say, well, I can see it good enough on my regular television. Although some people will like it because they want that 105-inch display. For the average consumer, maybe that doesn't matter that much.
And I think you're right, because with the Netflix, if I turn my head left to right, I'm still going to see the same picture. It's just, it's not virtual reality.
Well, they said they were going to put you in some kind of weird scenario of like a movie theater, of something else like that, and and that can be kind of cool and kind of nice, but it's still just going to be, you're there to watch what you normally watch on a computer monitor. So how really interesting can that be? But I have seen with certain demos that I think what blows people away is like they kind of expect it to be like you slip on the helmet and you get this might be reality, might not be reality, holodeck kind of picture in their mind. But no, like I've seen people go in with video game, like small little video games, if you want to call them really simulations, of let's say a roller coaster ride. They have you sit down in a chair, you strap the screen onto your face, and it's a blocky roller coaster. It's a blocky track. It's you can see the edges of the world. It's it's not a AAA title by any means, but just being there and putting the display on your face, it takes people there in a way that I think a lot of people have never really felt that immersion before. It doesn't have to be the best to really capture you.
Yeah, people immediately jump onto, what's the resolution? Can I see the pixels? And those things are important, but that's only, there's, you got audio, you have your proprioception, the sense of, where your physical body and body parts are located in the space.
Especially if you're playing Minecraft, it's not important.
Oh, I can't wait. Yeah, I can't wait to do a proper version of Minecraft in VR. That's going to be definitely cool. Sure. Very cool. There's certainly, that sort of beyond just the visuals. Like you were saying, it can be a very blocky, like cartoon-like world and still feel like you're there. It doesn't need to be photorealistic. If you're doing an immersive film, sure, maybe that's important. But there's, several different continua of what's important. So, like in the book, I describe different types of fidelity, right? There's what I call representational fidelity, which is about how well does it represent a real-world-like place, right? That's something that could be here like on Earth. That's the high end of that representational fidelity. But on the low end of the representational fidelity, you might have sort of an art-like sort of, blobs out in the world that you're just kind of floating through space in a very relaxing environment, right? That's nothing like the real world. And it might not be, super high resolution, models and textures and such, but it can be a very surreal sort of immersive type of experience that is just as valid as the experience that's trying to replicate the real world. So it really depends what you're trying to do with the experience. It doesn't necessarily need to match the real world.
So right, and I guess that kind of opens up the next question of what role are developers going to have to play in this, because you can get the hardware to a certain point, but we saw this was one of the downfalls of 3D television, was if there's no content for that medium, then people don't see value in it, and they just kind of say, maybe one day, and then they go on about their day. So what role are developers going to play in all this?
So I think that's definitely different in this case. It allows, developers to be creative, especially when the handheld controllers, start becoming more mainstream. It's limitless what you can do. So, how do you interact with the world? It's completely wide open. And it's also the case that people are so excited about this that they're developing the content for free, right? Like you have thousands of independent developers that, even though the larger companies might be waiting on it to see where it goes, there's still going to be content from, the smaller individuals. And so I don't think we're going to have any shortage whatsoever of development, which actually brings up one of the challenges. Is if so many people are out there creating content for free, then how do you monetize that when everyone else is giving it away for free? Even if your experience is better, if people don't know that, then they just go for the free version, then that's going to be one of the challenges of sustaining virtual reality, right? Because this can't go on forever without actually, bringing in income to help us pay the bills.
Right. Well, if recent history and technology and the way companies are making their revenue, if we learn anything, it's people don't mind subscriptions. So maybe you subscribe one day to a service that gives you new content, gives you new places, maybe a social circle of some kind, just kind of a subscription-based model for virtual reality, which would be weird, but I guess this whole field is so new and it's just starting that it's just a lot of speculation at this point.
Absolutely, and so the hardware might be able to be given away for free if you sign a contract, similar to cell phones. Absolutely.
So tell us a little bit about the book that you wrote, the VR book.
Absolutely.
Human-centered design for virtual reality. What inspired you to write that? And what is the book actually about?
Well, I was actually at a conference about a year ago, and I knew I've been wanting to write a book, but there's actually quite a few books out there on virtual reality, but they're all focused on the technology, which of course is my focus. But after seeing this conference, I realized that it's no longer about the hardware, which leads nicely into Ben's comment, that the hardware is now being done so well, at least by the market leaders in the space. It's being done so well that that's no longer where the challenge is from my point of view. Certainly, they're improving things and it's challenging for them, but that's no longer where I add the most value, because they're doing everything that I would be doing, I'd suggest them to do. They're sort of already doing it. I might be able to tweak it, and add a little bit of value, but what I realize, it's all about the content creation now, because the hardware is getting to be good enough. And it's also about how do we perceive the real world, and how does the different processes of the mind and such work, how do we perceive reality or virtual reality, whatever it is. It can kind of be lumped together into the same thing. They're very similar in some ways. How can we understand that in order to take advantage of it to replicate that in the virtual reality experience? And that realization led me to, to human-centered design. Instead of, let's, do with whatever we can with the number of pixels we have on the display and how fast the tracking we have. No, those are no longer the huge challenges. But now really anyone can come in and start developing for virtual reality because the hardware is done. You don't have to, in the past, it's always been kind of accepted that it needs to be multidisciplinary. You need psychologists, you need, the artists, you need creative types. That's been, stated, but it hasn't been actually true, because it's been, you had to tweak the hardware and spend most of your time on that, getting it to work right. But that's no longer the case. And so I'm very interested in getting out there and conveying the research that has been happening over the last 20 years and beyond in virtual reality, and introducing a lot of those concepts to those content creators that aren't aware of that research. And I see a big gap between what the newer sort of entertainment/industry, non-research content creators are doing. They're not aware of a lot of that research that the research community, virtual reality research community, has been investigating over the last 20 years. And so, for example, how do you interact with the hands? Well, until recently, consumer virtual reality has all been about the headset, of being able to look around. Mm-hmm. Well, in the consumer and the corporate virtual reality that we've been doing for quite a while, that doesn't make sense. If you don't have the hand, well, you can look around, but realistically, what you do? You can't interact with the world. And so, we've been doing that for a while, and there's more things, many different interaction techniques. I have around nearly 100 example interaction techniques I describe in the book of how do you interact in novel ways, these sort of magical techniques beyond what you can do in reality. And then I organize those into common interaction patterns to give you ideas to build upon and to replicate those things that have been used. And so those are some examples of the book. Also, I talk a lot about iterative design, which is all about human-centered design of lots of user testing, collecting feedback, and figuring out what works. Because even those of us that have been doing virtual reality for a while, so what? If it's a different application, it can be completely different. There's no right solution. It very much depends upon the content, the interactions. There's no single common interaction technique that works in every single situation. So it's still a lot of unknowns, a lot of experimentation that needs to be done for whatever you're trying to specifically create.
Again, and we see so much of this in movies depicted, even though was it 1994's Disclosure, which had, they had virtual reality. He was on a treadmill, walking around, making selections with his hand, and so all very futuristic. And this is back in '94, and it was sort of like a little of a window on the world. And of course, when you were watching that back in 1994 in the movie, saying, "Oh man." There were so many things in that particular film that I wanted, I wanted to get the phone and everything. All these things that they were so kind of futuristic, and a lot of them made it, some of them didn't. But I guess, let me ask you this: how do you think what you've written in your book will affect readers, and what is your expectation for its effect on the industry?
Well, I hope that they'll actually apply it instead of reading it or sitting on a shelf like most users. But I believe it's going to allow people to see, not based on what I've done, but based on what the research community has been doing for decades, of going beyond the obvious. How do you one, do things well so you don't get sick, and how do you mitigate sickness? There's several techniques that you can do to minimize those sickness effects, because that's a major challenge, and a lot of those are not obvious. They're just very and some very different than what how reality is. And again, it depends what you're trying to do. If you're trying to do a realistic sort of environment, well, some of those things apply and some of those things don't apply. But in other cases, like abstract games, I think it's going to be very different than what we might think of that occurs in reality. Another thing that I'm super excited about that consumer virtual reality is starting to do is bringing the hands, as I mentioned earlier, into the environment. There's so many things you can do beyond just picking up a gun and aiming it at your buddy, right? Although that can be a very surreal sort of engaging experience, right? Because that's just how we think. That's how we work in the real world. That can work extremely well. In fact, that sort of simple body language is huge. Or since you have head tracking, if you just turn around and you look at your opponent, suddenly you feel like they're looking at you. It's very different than video conferencing. Or if you're pointing a gun at your buddy, he may hold up his hands. He doesn't have to think about which button conveys the surrender command. No, he just does it naturally. And so that's sort of what everyone does at first, is those sort of simple motions, but you can go way beyond that. For example, you have something called the 3D user multi-touch pattern, which is, in some ways you can think of it as 2D multi-touch. So to be able to reach out in the environment and grab the world and treat that world as an object, to be able to, rotate it, or be able to grab the world and scale it up, or equivalently scale yourself smaller. And that brings up the point of the movies that you mentioned. One of the challenges of the movies is that a lot of these sort of futuristic interfaces don't work in actual virtual reality, because what sounds good, you just don't know until you get in there and you test it. And so, for example, your arms end up getting really tired with a lot of straightforward interfaces. If you're holding your hand up and swiping interfaces and such, something high up above the belt, then there's something called gorilla arm, which means after 30 seconds or so, you don't want to do it anymore. You're done. You want to take off the headset.
I got that experience when I was using a light pen. I thought it was going to be something so cool. Oh, look, I can take off the light pen. And then I found that my arm started to ache. You know, it was just not a natural position. Although, again, going back to that movie Disclosure, when he went to the filing cabinets and he was able to go through the file and touch the files, and the files would come out and open up, I thought that was actually kind of a cool thing to do. I don't know if that's applicable, but it
totally depends what you're trying to do. If you're trying to, replicate the real world, absolutely. Or if your data is structured in such a way that makes sense, then it might work.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it was part reality and it was part virtual. I mean, he would touch the folder, would come out, and then he could just touch or tap the things that he wanted in the folder to see, and then he could read the documents. So it seemed kind of natural, but with the augmentation of virtual reality.
Well, here's a great example of how to improve upon that interface. So it's very difficult. So you get in a bimanual interaction, which is two hands to interact, right? Which I'm very happy to see that the consumer version of hand tracking could skip the single-handed tracker, because most even professional systems only use one hand, which is really not an ideal situation, because you can think of peeling a potato, right? Have you ever tried to peel a potato with one hand?
No.
It's pretty difficult.
Not
right?
like,
But if you hold it in your non-dominant hand, which is most people your left hand, then you can that hand controls the reference frame, and what becomes very difficult with one hand suddenly becomes really easy and efficient with two hands, even though you don't think about it. It sort of becomes natural. If we can create those interfaces to work in that natural way and think about, beyond the obvious of, the left non-dominant hand acts as a reference frame, and I can move that around simultaneously as I do the right hand, and I have all these asynchronous interactions, whatever it might be. So an example of the filing cabinet. A reason why, even if it's kind of, it's not high up above where your arms will get tired, even if that interface is locked in place sort of down by your belt in front of you, if you're trying to reach out and touch that in a very specific position and you keep repeating that position, your arms are still going to get tired. However, if you can grab that interface, say with the non-dominant hand, for example, you can rest it on your hand. You can even rest that non-dominant hand, if you have a solid, good tracking system, on your lap, and you can interact with that using your right hand to point with the sort of laser or sort of a pin sort of interface, and then control the reference frame with the left hand. Or you can take the entire world and using the 3D multi-touch pattern, for example, and you can bring the world down to your lap into a comfortable position. Then when that gets tired, you can you can rotate it a little bit to a little bit more comfortable position, and that actually turns out to drastically reduce that gorilla arm. And so we've ran studies where people have been able to work up to 6 hours with no complaints of arm fatigue, which even surprised me. I mean, I kind of had the idea that will work, but not 6 hours. I was thinking 45 minutes instead of 5 minutes.
What about sitting down to a virtual piano and playing the piano keys? Do you think we're going to get that kind of a...
Oh, I hope so. So part of the challenge in virtual reality is the sense of touch. You sort of have this visual, physical conflict of, if I reach out and touch something visually, I don't physically feel it. Or my hand goes through the object physically, or the hand stops visually, but it keeps going physically. You have that mismatch. So there's something called haptics, which is the sense of touch. And piano is very much about the sense of touch, right? A good piano player can play with, up to a point with his eyes closed just by playing by touch. And so there's all different sorts of ways you can do that. You could have a physical, replica of a piano there. You can have something called passive haptics, which just means you kind of fake it. So you visually there's something there, and you put a desk there, and maybe the physical representation of the desk is simply styrofoam blocks. We did some work back at the University of North Carolina, 10 or 15 years ago, where you saw something visually, and we had a high-end tracking system, so you could walk around in a large tracked space, and then what we did, this is what made it very real, that sense of presence was taken to a whole new level, is when you reached out and touched something, we had a low-fidelity physical low-cost foam blocks, And so that you saw your hand touch it, and you also felt it touch, and suddenly you thought, whoa, this really is real, even though it's not photorealistic.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa, this is like for real. Then you could reach out and you could open up the curtains, and then we had a fan behind the curtains that you felt the wind. And then we said, okay, now walk into this other room, and the door opens, they look in the room, and there's a 20-foot pit in the floor.
Oops.
Right? And you're like, wow.
And then
so
the undergrads fainted. They just passed out.
Some of them came close to it. They look into that room, and we took physiological measures. So we measured palm sweat, we measured heart rate, for example, to see if there was a difference when they saw that visual pit. And there's a little bit of difference. But, still some people are like, wow, this is so cool. But, come on, it's not, didn't really put a 20-foot hole in the floor. I mean, come on. And so we said, well, why don't you put your foot over the ledge? We had something called a diving board, right, that went out over the ledge. And so they put their foot over the ledge, and what we didn't tell them, again, the physical sense of touch, there was an 1.5-inch ledge of plywood where their toe would hang over the ledge. And some people, not everyone, but a good number of people would physically, they would jump back.
Retract.
I mean, they were startled. Sometimes they'd be just like sweat coming out of their face. Some people would be getting on their hands and knees, crawling up to the edge. Even though logically it doesn't make sense, there's a hole in the floor.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, that whole sense of presence is taken to a whole new level when you do that.
Jason, we could go on this for hours. Unfortunately, we're up against the end of the top of the hour here, and
it's like you could almost teach a class on this.
Yeah, right. We should have you back again if you're so willing. We'd love to have.
I'd love to. I could talk. Yeah, if you don't stop me now, I could go for the next 16 hours. So.
Exactly. Well, we'll certainly have you back again. We have our Gamer Tuesdays, and certainly would love to talk about virtual reality.
And I'll be the first to say it, we'd love to have you on as soon as one of these virtual reality or augmented reality things actually do hit the market.
Absolutely. All right.
Absolutely. I can't wait.
Well, Jason, again, I want to thank you for being here on the show with us. Again, you can go. We have the
90
website.
seconds.
The website is up at computeramerica.com for both the next generation NextGen
interactions. There you go.
And the VRbook.net. We have the website link there at the website for both of them. Jason, thank you again so much for being with us here. It was a real pleasure.
All right. Thanks, Ben and Craig. That was fun.
All right. We'll do it again. Have a good evening.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye. All right. Well, that about wraps up the show. Boy, that was great.
Yeah, that went quick.
Seconds.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
I don't want to say that went quick as in like, woo, my work day is over. We're out of here. No, that was a lot of fun.
Tomorrow we're going to have David Perry with us. We haven't had him on.
Long time no see.
Yeah. And he's going to be talking about some points that he finds about changes in the world in security. And he's going to be talking about some of the techniques. He's been in the tech support unit for like 20 years, so
he is a veteran.
Yeah. And Ben and I will see you same place, same time. So until tomorrow afternoon, this is Craig Crossman hoping that your hard disk never becomes floppy. We'll see you tomorrow afternoon.
Goodbye, everyone.
10 seconds. Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye.
Okay, again, thanks everybody for watching. Hope you had a lot of fun. That was a really good show. And again, Ben and I will see you tomorrow with David Perry. Got some interesting stuff to talk about when it comes to security. So have a good day, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.